Just give me a message if you wouldn't mind. I've enabled public chat, or you can send a private message. But just now, if there's any problem with the sound quality or visual, otherwise I'm going to assume that everyone can hear me, and I'm going to get started. So, oh, and I got a thumbs up from Hannah. That's a creative solution. So I'm glad to meet you. My name is Megan Matt, and I am the founder of the Books Right. It's a cloud accounting service. We help small businesses, entrepreneurs, startups, and established businesses to handle their day-to-day accounting needs. I have a team in the Philippines, and I focus mostly on sales and growing the business, which is probably what you want to be doing. So that's kind of the heart of why I'm doing this workshop today. And first off, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to ParadigmNEXT. Anna Tolley invited me to present. And this is a really fun opportunity to get in touch with a community that I'm really passionate about. I just believe that entrepreneurs are a growing, influential part of the world in general. And with the tools and the software and the communities we have available today, I really think entrepreneurs like you or the entrepreneur you soon will be are changing the world. So I'm really glad to be able to talk to you today. So a little bit more about me. Prior to founding the Books Right, I had an IT distribution business. We sold computer hardware to companies like IBM and HP and NCR. And basically, it's really complicated to do all the purchasing of the parts. So we were a business process outsourcing, or BPO. And I just realized I didn't get to my lovely introduction slide. So, and that brings me to my current business and my workshop today. As a small business owner, my niche in the company was to find ways to make things go faster and better. And the really exciting thing is you can be a really small company, no employees, 2 employees, 1.5 if you count half of your spouse, and really compete with large players. And a lot of that is because of shifts that have happened in operations, accounting, and software across the spectrum, data storage, everything emerging. So it's a really great time to be an entrepreneur, and we're going to talk about ways that you can handle the annoying part of the business and minimize it, but take care of it so the core of your business is strong. So operations and accounting for people with better things to do. We're going to hit on just 3 points today. First of all, I don't know if I use the phrase, but you probably have heard a lot the phrase front office versus back office. And as someone whose business is the back office, I can tell you that we're generally considered not the cool part. And, I'd love to argue with that, but that's kind of true. Because, and I'll show you why as we talk about that. It's not the sexy part of the business, and it's not the part that's directly touching clients. So there's a reason that the back office kind of has a stigma. The second thing I'm going to talk about is once we understand the back office, how to get that back office off your plate, how to streamline your operations so that you can have more time and make more progress to achieve your goals. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A. As you came in, well, you would have missed it if you just joined us. I had some questions to think about, just basically any sort of tasks that are annoying you, and we can talk about ways that maybe we can get those tasks off of your plate. And otherwise, if you just have any other general accounting and operations questions, if it's a sensitive nature, you can also PM me, and I will get back to you if you want to, talk about financial details or something. Just don't private message your bank account or Social Security. That would be another point I could make. So, but I think we're at a higher level. So now that you know not to send your Social Security, we can talk about strategies that might mean something to you. So, but we didn't do our big back office versus front office. So first of all, what I mean by back office versus front office. And I drew this handy-dandy quadrant, but I kind of mixed it up because you'll notice that the 4 quadrants aren't the same. And what's happening is the back office, the data-facing side of your business, is getting smaller. The customer-facing front office, which includes sales, user experience, I would have put customer experience, customer service, but UX fit better. So include that there. And marketing and all the fun parts of the business are the front office customer facing. But 2 things have happened. One thing, the things that have been happening in the back office, accounting, HR, a lot of these things because of technology have literally gotten smaller. And, you know, case in point, the number of people like myself, this is my home office, but I spend most of my time in a shared office. I have files, but they're mostly, you know, to hold old medical documents that I'm never going to look at. I'm just worried I'll need someday. We're shifting away from big filing spaces, big spaces in general, and also people have been replaced by computers. It's something sometimes in the news we talk about in a bad way. I tend to be more positive as someone who does data and has a team that does data. I know that there are always better things they can be doing than trying to be a human computer, because computers are good at being computers and humans are good at being humans. But that was a tangent. So anyway, the back office has literally gotten smaller, and so you're lucky. You don't have to do as much. You don't have to have photocopies. You don't have to have those cool like binders that have the butterfly clips that I do like, but they're pretty useless because you should have some software that tracks the information. And so I will talk about some of the operation things, but you're lucky that now software is taking care of a lot of it, and also cloud storage and a million other SaaS solutions. But another trend is that I think smart businesses are more customer focused. So parts of the back office are also creeping out into the front office. And this is something I believe really strongly in. Although I do accounting, a lot of times what you do in accounting is data, but it has everything to do with how your customer sees your business and your brand. So whether you're handling your own accounts receivable, you know, there's a big difference between sending an email that says, hey, you're behind, we're going to go into collections, and sending an email that's like, oh, I'm sure you forgot about this. Could you tell me when you might be able to schedule it? Or even better, be ahead of the next reminder, forging that relationship with the people who pay the bills. And that's all part of customer service. And technically it's accounting, but you really want it to be done in such a way that it's representing the values of your company and your brand. So the types of areas that I'm going to talk about today, the traditional back office areas that are moving forward are accounting, because that's my area. Also IT, definitely not my area, but something that I respect and am always eager to learn about and know how important it is to a business. HR, that's something that I've come to love, and compliance. And by compliance, we're mostly going to mean legal, which most small businesses really don't have to do a lot, but would outsource any that they do, and also insurance contracts sometimes require you to have insurance, things like that. So I know that's a big picture look at operations, and some of you, if you haven't started a business, that might seem like a bit much, but we're definitely going to narrow in on the nitty-gritty. I just wanted to start off by showing, at least in my opinion, the trend in operations today, which is to make the back office smaller and to find ways for it to support the mission of the company. So how do we do that? Number one, automate. And this is the most important thing. And it's probably something that's so pervasive in your life that you don't see it. Nowadays, we hear a lot of news, you know, Elon Musk talking about robots killing their owners. I'm going to die. But really, automation is a lot less cool. It tends to be, automation tends to be a little bit of software that you add on so that you can For example, in my business, a lot of times we get stuck with these old PDFs and we have to scan the PDF and turn it into Excel. And that just keeps us all from going insane and, and from billing our clients more because, you know, it takes a lot to read and type. And again, if a machine can do it, i.e. reading small print, then let the machine do it so you can work on the bigger ideas. So automation. So the trend also nowadays, and I see this definitely in my business, is toward APIs. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically the way software talks to each other. I would say 10 years ago to 5 years ago, definitely in my prior business, the trend was more maybe open source software, but building large enterprise systems, building it yourself, kind of on your own little island. And nowadays, I think the most agile businesses are just taking the pieces that they need, just pulling out, oh, I really need to grow sales, so I better have a good CRM. I really need to keep track of hours that I'm billing my customers, so I need a good project management software. And I think personally, it's really vital whenever you're choosing software, you know, whether it's an operating system or an accounting system or an HR system. I always like to find something that plays nicely with others. And if it doesn't, then there should be a real cost savings or some other benefit because you're losing out when you can't integrate your other solutions and get them to speak to each other. So in addition to automation, this is something I have focused on throughout my business. As I said before, my prior business was BPO. And the important thing here is to outsource ethically and effectively. And first of all, I think probably when you hear outsource, your first thought is jobs overseas. And it could be overseas, but outsourcing just means instead of hiring someone to do a job, to contract it out. And so probably most people I know who outsource hire people in the U.S. They might be in a different state or they might be next door. And especially for growing businesses, if you tried to bring on these people on salary, you would go under. So that wouldn't serve anybody. I get a little annoyed sometimes people talk about, oh, you're giving jobs away. But in my case, a lot of times it just wouldn't be a job to give away. It's giving myself a little more time. So when you outsource, there are a few things to think about. The first thing is the legal aspect. And this is most important. If you are outsourcing in the U.S., the IRS is very picky about whether the person can be classified as an employee. Some things that you can do, you know, to find out if they are a contractor or an employee. The tests, you can look this up online, but the tests would include, do they have some say in the scope of their work? So if you are in a coal mine, you kind of show up and punch in and you do whatever coal mining related task is asked of you. But if you're a graphic designer, you say, I do graphic design. That's what I sell to you. And it's unlikely that, especially because of the rates you can charge, it's unlikely someone's going to ask you to pour coffee. So, so that would be the big test if they have some control over it. They should have an invoice. They should have their own business. And they should know that it's something you should talk about so that they know that they have to pay self-employment tax. Because the big difference is you don't pay their Social Security. They do. You don't withhold it out of their salary. Not salary. You don't withhold it out of their payment. And that's something that they need to be responsible for. Most commonly, these are going to be referred to as 1099 employees. And if you, it's very easy to do. If you do get into a payroll software or an accounting software, you'll be asked to generate a 1099 at the end of the year. A lot of people will remind you. The IRS will remind you, and it's an important classification. There's not the same distinction with people overseas, and the reason is you don't have a choice. My team is in the Philippines, I hired the first person on my team, Catherine. I've been working with her about 3 years. She worked at my prior company and is just a really strong fit. And so she's helped me to grow the rest of my team. And unlike me, she's actually a CPA, and which is nice. And so she provides the very typical conservative accounting approach, and I provide the business approach, where, how does this affect the business owner day to day? But some important things that I've learned, I've also opened offices in India and Poland and hired contractors in both those countries. You cannot over-communicate with your contractors overseas what the expectations are. I think, it goes without saying, in some of these countries, the salary means a lot. I've had employees where they're more likely to have to pay private school fees, and if their payroll doesn't come on time, they might not be able to send their child to school. And the Philippines, also in most of Europe, it's assumed that at the end of the year, you'll pay what's called the 13th month. And they're not, just to generalize, in my experience, most contractors aren't going to say, I'm a contractor, not an employee. It's really something they would expect. And so I just keep a spreadsheet. I'm sure there's some software out there, so I should practice what I preach. But I keep a spreadsheet, and every month I calculate 1/12. I have a little formula, 1/12 times what I've paid, so that I am budgeting for that at the end of the year, because that could be a huge disappointment if you're expecting a month of salary and are told that you're not getting it. So that's one example of, if you do hire someone overseas, that you really need to be talking to them about the expectations. Just looking at my notes. Another thing that I've learned, and I think you could couch this one way, is just straight up, don't be racist. A lot of people, when they talk about outsourced employees, there's sort of this attitude that they do the undesirable things. And that might work out, it might be true, but if you want to grow your business, I think it's really great if there's a way for everybody, no matter where they work, no matter what their nationality, has a feeling of being part of a big team. And so, for example, with my team, some people believe you have to micromanage outsourced employees. Otherwise they'll be doing other jobs. You'll hear a lot of things, and that might be true. But my focus is, I don't care. I just want you to do the work for me. And if you do it well, I'm not going to respect you. And an interesting thing has happened. In the Philippines, a lot of times there are power outages, internet outages. This is typhoon season. And I factor that in, knowing the area. I'm not going to penalize people and say, if you have a typhoon, I'm not paying you. I just would rather build a long-term relationship. As a result of that, I've had employees text me that they're spending the night at a friend's house in another neighborhood just so that they can work, because there's this sense of, and there's nothing I've communicated, but there's this sense of teamwork and being part of the business. And I think if you want to cultivate that, if you want to get employees who are tied to you, use the same principles you would learn about in American HR. Another thing we provide is bonuses for training. And I allow, because a lot of times there's downtime between projects, or they're waiting for me to get them information, and they're hanging on a client. And so as part of our compensation, they get bonuses when they pass certification. I strongly recommend, if you do have overseas contractors, to include some sort of education or professional development, because a lot of times the people who come to you, they're really entrepreneurial, and they're really excited to learn. And you want to harness that. You want to give them an opportunity. Buy a subscription to lynda.com, set them on Udacity, or whatever, ask them to watch 20 YouTubes on salesforce.com so you can get that up and running. And that will pay huge dividends to your company. I think it goes without saying, without you having to pay too much to them. So Number 3, use cloud storage. Now, the exception to this would be if you have some sort of crazy video gaming system where, in this case, you would know a lot more about this topic than me. So if you're somebody who knows a lot about network storage, then I'm probably not talking to you. But maybe you could put in the message and you could correct me. But as a business owner who doesn't like to deal with IT that much, I can say that it's generally best to use cloud storage. For one thing, the people who run cloud storage know about data security. As a business owner, you may think having a little server in your basement. I have one for my husband's business. It may feel like it's safer. There's a server in my basement, and nobody can get at it. Well, people can get at it. I've had my server hacked in multiple times because, of course, it's connected to the internet, just as it would be if it were over at Amazon. So from a security standpoint, unless you can personally do the security yourself, I highly recommend doing cloud storage, because the alternative is you're going to have to hire a very in-demand group of people who do servers, and of course, I've hired them all over the world. They tend to be in demand and not last the longest, and they also have some power over you because they have all of your business's information, which if you can't put in the safeguards yourself on a basic level, I'm not sure is a responsibility you want to do. And just the basic fact, most businesses aren't dealing with that much data. And I bring this up because I go to see businesses all the time. I was at a daycare center that had a cloud, their own server, and they were paying $1,000 a month. And I just thought, oh, this is ridiculous. Their data was basically, they didn't have the kids' information on there. It was basically mailing it, contacts on there. There was really no reason to have a server. So store everything in the cloud. And this is the important part. I don't like to be a really bossy boss, but this is one place where you need to be a jerk, and you need to nag, and you need to really keep track of people. Make sure people save all their data in the shared cloud storage, because they won't. They'll keep it on their laptop. They'll keep it on their phone. They'll keep it in weird places. And it doesn't matter how friendly you are. You need to have the data that belongs to you. So if somebody is working on a project and you're paying them, it needs to be saved in the Google Drive or the box or wherever it is you store your shared files, or if you have your own data storage system, whatever it is. So that is something that you always need to be nagging people about, and I know from experience. And sometimes as business owners, we're the worst. And then we ask people to do things, and then we realize, oh, sorry, that's on my own laptop. Oh, yeah, I meant to move that. So it's also a good idea to practice what you preach. So use cloud storage. Number 4, manage your advisors, not vice versa. I think this is especially important if you're a startup. I personally find, and maybe it's because I'm female, sometimes if you're not careful, as you're looking around for attorneys, accountants, any sort of advisor, business, outsource CFOs, there's a tendency when you're a business owner for them to want to intimidate you. And it's a pretty good sales tactic, like, oh, if you were a real business, you would pay my $10,000 retainer. Don't let them do that to you. For one thing, I'm telling you now, it's kind of a mind. So the important thing is, if you are writing a contract with somebody and you can't afford the $3,000 that an attorney quoted you, I'm just throwing that out there, maybe less, maybe more. It doesn't mean that you can't get support from an attorney. Just say, look, I'm a struggling business owner. I know this contract is important, but I can't afford that. So what I'd like to do is draft it myself and have you review it and give me feedback. And I'll pay you for an hour and a half, which should be, I don't know, $500. And it may take 5 advisors to get somebody who's willing to sell you what you need and what you want, but it's definitely worth it. And it's a big skill that you're going to need as a business owner. So I sometimes, one of my weaknesses is I tend to be a little bit penny wise, pound foolish. There's literally nothing that I won't try to do myself rather than paying someone. And that's sometimes really stupid. But sometimes it's also really good because what it forces me to do is a lot of research before I go into a situation where I'm going to part with, 3 zeros. I am going to spend some time online and at the library and using free resources just so I can be an educated shopper. So when you're hiring any sort of advisor, just make sure that they're selling results and that those results are oriented towards what you need. Number 5, hire generalists. So wherever you are in the process, you're going to get to a point where you do get to hire more people. And probably you're going to want to hire someone to work with you directly in an office. Not necessarily. Some businesses go virtual for years and years, but usually a scalable business, especially an IT startup, is definitely going to be growing a team. Now, what does hiring generalists have to do with operations and accounting? What's important is that if you hire the right people with the right attitude, then they're going to be able to take on a lot of these operations tasks and do it in a way that's not resentful. Now, what that means is that they're going to be willing to send out some invoices and not say, I'm not a trained accountant. Well, it's kind of silly. A lot of times, I've used a lot of accounting software, and usually we're talking about a system that involves clicking a button and sending a PDF. And if somebody's essentially saying to you, it's not in my job description to click a button and send a PDF, you really have to come back at them, well, do you want this business to grow? And is it in your interest to have us pay somebody $15 an hour to be here so that on the chance that there's a button to click, the button can get clicked? And just invite them in to being team players and understanding how the business works. So another, growing pain that some businesses fall into, I heard Seth Godin has a really good podcast series. I'll link it on my website. I want to put together a resource page. But it's a really good website, a series for entrepreneurs. And he has this great point about growing businesses. Once you finally get to the point, you want your mom and dad to be proud of you. You want to look really cool in those corporate papers. There's a tendency to want to hire, quote unquote, professionals, people from big companies, people with really long, cool sounding titles. And he advises to be really careful with that, because if you're trying to be a young, agile company with low overhead, low expenses, a lean back office, then hiring someone who comes from an environment where you just automatically have a big budget and spend it, it might not be the right thing for your company, and it also might not be the right attitude. Basically, there's no room for princesses in startups. Like what I said about generalists and the importance of being able to get your hands dirty. Just be sure if somebody's coming in with a really great pedigree that they're with a startup because they want to be with a startup and they want to play and explore and work with a team and be involved with every area, because that's going to be important for a long time. Chapter 6. It feels like it's a book. Point 6, DIY if you can learn something. Now, again, I'm somebody who tends to go to an extreme. I tend to probably do too much, but it's something I'm aware of and something that I'm always struggling with. Is that something that somebody else could do? And it's something I've gotten better at. It's one of those things, recognize your weakness, but also try to get better. But I do think it's essential to DIY if you can learn something. If you, I'll take accounting because that's what I do. My favorite clients are not those who have never tried to do the accounting themselves. They're the ones who have explored and played around and just decided that they want help. And because when I come to someone at that point, I know that they've already learned something about what the accounting system is. It's definitely easier if somebody just wants to write you a check and say, just do what you do best. That's easier. But for the benefit of the business, it's also good if they take some interest in the work that you're doing. And for most people, that's going to involve just getting involved with every aspect. I've mentioned that I'm not naturally a tech person, but any tech area that is involved with my business, I'm currently working on a software to support my clients. And so I am learning about the languages that we might use for that communication tool because I'm not going to be able to hire and manage people if I don't even have the vocabulary. So I think the adage that your time is valuable, after all, it's the title of my presentation, people have better things to do than the tedious things. I think that's true. I don't think data entry is probably something you need to do to learn anything. But it might be a good idea to at least see what your tax forms are so you know what they're billing you for. So at least watch a video on how your HR software works, even if you're not going to use it. I think that if you're going to effectively manage people, you should DIY a little bit, or in my case, a lot. So the final point, and this is, I'm really close to schedule, I'm proud of myself. So this is also important as you grow, but personally, depending how you organize your thoughts, I also think it's important early on to create a dynamic ops manual or some kind of intranet, or in my prior business we used something called WikiWiki, which is a software to make an intranet, to make a wiki. And this is as opposed to traditionally an operations manual or ops manual would tell people how to do their jobs, and it would be a book. And in some businesses, you might even be tested on the book. And you can kind of guess how much the book got used. How many jobs have you had where you just sit around in the break room and like, oh, I really want to look at the operations manual to check out my workflow. It's just not something people do. But if you can engage your employees in helping to produce content, so with my team, we're constantly growing or constantly adding new software. It's something that we all like to do. We like to play with fun new software and spend time doing that. And as an employer, I think it's a huge advantage that I do have my staff play around with software because we learn about it. And even if we decide not to use it, we can tell our clients why we don't use it. But as you're doing that, everyone should be making screenshots or videos. Visual is always better. I've typically run global businesses, so, it's definitely when people aren't speaking with the same accent as you or writing with the same idiom. Unfortunately, they probably write better in other countries than I do. But, if I really want to get my point across, even, to somebody in my family, a visual is, for most people, going to be much easier than written text. It's just going to be faster for the eye to find it. It's going to be more interesting, and it's going to be more easy to understand. So I personally love playing around with visual software. I'm not a designer, but I like to look at pretty things. So tools like Canva, Lucid Chart, you can make workflows. You can make, labels for different tasks. You can make lists. You can make checklists. You can use Google Forms to make checklists. Basically, all of this is speaking to the need as you're learning. Write it down, and ideally make it a system. So if you have learned the best way to get clients to pay invoices is to, IM them 2 days before you send the invoice and ask them how they're doing, and then send the invoice, and then call them 3.5 days later. That's way more obsessive than I've ever been, but it sounds very scientific. But you get what I'm saying. If you found that's the message, then write it down. And when people join your company, they know that's what they do. But instead of writing it in a book, make it something that everyone can engage with and make it something tech-friendly. I've usually used an intranet, or just private web pages on my regular website that's only open to staff. And I think increasingly, especially with global staff, you would want to make this something that can be used mobile. That's a trend that I see. Definitely my staff, often when the internet goes out, they'll use mobile. And in some cases, the mobile seems to be better than the internet, so people are going back and forth. So any sort of instructions or checklists, if you can make it usable on a mobile format, if employees are in India, Philippines, Africa, then that's probably going to work a lot better for you. So I would love to open up for any questions. I think I summed up my general points about operations and accounting, but I hope that I can also address some more specific questions. Maybe is there anybody who is starting a business? We have one from my good friend Andrew. He's saying, many millennials consider themselves generalists. What's your opinion of what they bring to the table? I went to liberal arts college, so I love generalists because otherwise nobody would have ever hired me. I'm a little older than millennials, just a smidge, but I think, to me, what generalist means, and if this is what a millennial means, is a generalist should be someone who loves to learn and solve problems. So when you talk about, what do? You talk about the problems that you solve, the kind of problems you like to solve, the things you're curious about, not the label or the title or the track you followed. So I love generalists. If it just means that you're confused, I think that's okay. Just pick a goal and work towards it, and you'll probably be less confused. But I think generalists are great. And Erin is asking, as a young entrepreneur, how do you suggest building a strong network of advisors and mentors? I enjoy networking, but I think sometimes, especially people, it always happens when you're most eager, right? When you need a job. There used to be a joke. Now LinkedIn's really popular, but there was a joke on 30 Rock, he was on LinkedIn, he must be losing his job. That people are going to approach you because they need something. So the best approach for networking is to be giving something, to be generous, and to try to connect people with others. Specifically, I, for example, I'm really interested in investors because I work with a lot of startups. So I will connect with some advisors And I guess this is an example of asking. I'm not giving anything, but I would. And I just write and ask for an informational interview, but I'm asking on behalf of other people. So I can get a venture capitalist to sit down with me for a 15-minute coffee when, one, it's literally a 15-minute coffee, wherever they want it to be, whenever they want it to be, and I'm couching it as asking for advice for young entrepreneurs because they love to help young entrepreneurs. So that helps me grow my network, but I do it by not saying, oh, I want to work in your firm in 10 years. Talk to me. Just try to not have me in the conversation and you can grow your network. Lydia's asking, how did I approach hiring on a global scale? Was it mainly through connections or through formal channels? The first employee I ever hired was somebody that would have been 2009. It was somebody my husband had worked with in a bank. And we built our team in India basically person by person. And that early team also helped us establish a business overseas, which is much harder. And I'm not sure it's something that I would recommend doing for most people. For our business in procurement, because we're selling, it's good to have a local location because then we can sell to companies in India, which is hard to do as an American company. But the first hires typically are contractors. In that case, we had a work connection. As I moved into the Philippines, I use a website called Easy Outsource. I can share the secret sauce. I'll write it right here. And that was where, when I first hired in the Philippines, I hired an HR manager. Talk about getting complicated. You can actually hire an HR person, and she cost a lot, but she provided some invaluable insight because we learned about what the expectations were, what the salary expectations are. I know it's going to sound like really stingy, but there is sometimes a danger to overpaying because sometimes you're perceived as not being careful with your money, not respectable, not intelligent. Whereas if you're paying, just above market rate and then being very generous with performance bonuses, like I am, then I think that the employees respect you. So anyway, it's all of the above, Lydia, networking, and but my favorite is to hire contractors and find your favorite one and have them help build a team. So Catherine worked in restaurants for years, and she brought, or hotels, so she brought me people who worked in accounting with her and her supervisors. So that's the best. You're welcome. So I think that about wraps it up for today. I want to say thank you again to ParadigmNEXT. It was really nice of you to have me. I know that not everyone loves to talk about accounting, but hopefully if you spend a little time, you can think about it a little less. And I look forward to more of the webinars you guys are putting on. So have a great day, everybody.